we'll see how it goes with the cold open.
Perfect.
Hopefully there's enough material there for you to go off of. All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of the only show that cries at vending machines when they see L3. I'm Max.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Luke.
And this is Force for Thought. I appreciate you for still laughing at that, even though you knew that was coming.
I'm visually picturing it. It's a lot funnier.
Ooh, Kit Kat. Single tear rolls down your eye.
I almost looked behind me when you said that.
We're going to be talking a little bit about Mandalorian Season 3, reviewing it.
As a whole.
As a
bird's
whole,
eye view.
I think there's going to be some hot takes, some big opinions coming, so make sure everyone's...
Dissenting opinions, we'll say.
As-
Not necessarily hot or big.
Also,
I
or
already
wrong
know...
Or right.
Also, as a caveat, we all really love Star Wars, even if we have some complaints as normal people, right? All do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're really splitting hairs, which is basically the thesis of this podcast. We're arguing between like a 9.5 or a perfect 10 every time, right?
Yeah. I mean, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We love Star
Overall,
Wars.
yes.
Yes.
This season, maybe a little lower.
I just don't like how Luke's setting this up to be splitting hairs between 9.5 and a 10, because I know he's going to say...
Season 3 was very good.
Well, how would you rank the seasons? Off the bat, right now.
I mean, off the bat, they're all going to be 9.5s and 10s.
That's fine, but how would you rank them? Rewatch value?
9.5, season 1.
No, you don't have to do 9.5. You just...
Descending order, your favorite to least favorite.
Season 2, season 3, season 1.
So 2 is
Okay.
the best. One
If it
was
wasn't...
the worst.
Season
Yeah.
2 should be your favorite, I feel like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you see Luke Skywalker and
Ahsoka
Ahsoka.
Tano, yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Just
Yeah.
making
Frog
sure
lady.
we have this... Oh, my God. Just so we have...
He's not joking, though.
I know.
He's
The
not
fact,
joking.
the fact
Frog lady.
that you mentioned those
She
three.
runs on all four hands as if a quadrupod again.
Yes, but just the fact that you said those three names in the same sentence is like actually kind of frustrating.
Bo-Katan was cool too.
That's why I was upset when Luke was saying, well, we're just, nipping between 9.5s and 10s. And I'm like, no, we're not. You are saying random characters that nobody cared
I think
for are
as
amazing.
as a series whole, the whole Star Wars thing, yes, I 1000% agree.
With what?
That it's like 9.5 to 10.
Okay.
As a whole, as Star Wars,
As
right?
a whole, yeah.
But you think season 3 brings down the average?
No, I mean, I think it's great. I like Star Wars on a weekly basis. I think it's a blast. I go over Max's house every Wednesday, and we watch Star Wars, which is like something that like we weren't able to do for a very long time. Like we were just talking about how
Decades.
like when we started college, when we graduated college, there was no Star Wars for like years at that point. I mean, almost
Because you
obviously
graduated college in what,
2016.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we were like in 2014, or maybe it was the first trailer. I mean, like Max and I watched it at our apartment, and like teared up when like the Han and Chewie came on. That was the second teaser.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second
I watched
teaser.
that almost on a weekly basis still. If I want to, I want to tear
It's a
up.
good one.
It's so good. But like I think just being able to go out and to go out for me to go to your house literally to watch Star Wars on a weekly basis is great. So I'll take anything, even like Book of Boba Fett, right? Which I didn't necessarily love. Like it wasn't like the upper echelon. I still like love that experience of going and watching it, right? Like it is just a blast to
That's
experience.
interesting. Let me talk about that for a second, and then I'll seg that way into the Mandalorian. The Book of Boba
Seg
Fett
that
was...
way?
Segue that into the
Sorry.
Mandalorian.
I don't know why I'm calling everyone's flaws out there.
Because there were some lows in Boba Fett, right? Overall, it was not my favorite live action TV show, but there were moments where you're just like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
right.
I
Like,
like that.
it took some time getting there, but in the last episode of Boba Fett, when you saw him riding that Rancor into
Yes.
battle, I'm sorry, you like that.
Yes.
That looks good,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
He stabbed Cad Bane with a gaffy stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah. Exactly. Sorry.
And
you wanna
that
say more?
and that segues into The Mandalorian, because I thought, going back to what you said, I thought Mandalorian season 3, I don't think it was above or below average. I thought it was like the average for Mandalorian. My order probably would go 2, 1, 3, but just because even though season 3 had some really high highs, there were some really low lows. But at the end, the last episode, I thought it was only okay because it came hot off of episode 7, which I thought was incredible.
Episode 7 was by far the best episode of the series. In my
Absolutely.
mind.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh, season or series?
the series?
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker comes up.
Yeah, I don't
he
know about,
shows
I don't know
up.
about
That is
series.
not like if
Yeah.
you're gonna.
I really liked episode 7.
Well,
So did I.
But you're within your right, too. Episode 7 was an incredible episode, and then coming
Absolutely.
off of that, episode 8, which was really good.
Yeah.
I feel like just because it came off of episode 7, I was kind of like, okay, that's good. But it did a good job of like tying everything up. But again, there were those moments
Did
where
an
you're
okay job of tying everything up. I really
No.
like season 3,
It
but
tied
I
up
was
everything.
the finale was one of the more disappointing parts for me.
Have you rewatched it?
No.
To be fair, I haven't either. I am sorry. That's
less than a week.
That's a loaded question. I meant the show, the season, but that's a loaded question because I haven't either. Because I'm just wondering, watching it as a whole piece of media, right? Like I assume we've all watched season 1 and 2 cohesively together. Like, not together as in us, but I mean like we watched episodes like 1 through 8 closer together than week by week. Like I've watched like season 2 over again.
I've rewatched it, and I guess it didn't take me 8 weeks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I'm saying, I wonder if season 3 will hold up for you. We should do another episode. Rewatch all of season 3. Rewatch season 3 because I'm wondering if it does. If you find inconsistencies in it, or if you like it more and it can solidify your ranking. Because I think that's something that's interesting. Is like once it's on the week to week basis, I'm on a high consistently, looking forward to the next episode. But watching them back to back to back, I wonder if it'll give you the same effect. I don't know. We'll see.
See, I feel like it will, especially for season 3, because season 3 did a much better job of following an overall through line, as opposed to just doing a different isolated mission every single episode. Because I like following those through lines, and I like that episodes 1 and 2, there was no like real conclusion.
No.
At like either of those episodes, it was just like continuing a single story,
Yeah.
and I really like that. And then you took that little sidetrack to follow Kane on Coruscant, and she wiped Pershing's mind.
Love it.
I really like that episode too.
Flayed.
A lot
Yep.
of people
Flayed his
flayed
mind.
his mind. Oh, that was a
The
mind
flayer.
flayer.
Stranger Things crossover.
There
D&D
was-
crossover?
I have not seen Stranger Things.
You haven't
No.
seen Stranger?
Any of it?
Oh man,
It's really good.
yeah, you gotta see
That's what
that.
I hear.
It's in my top 10 shows, and it's a hard top 10 to crack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking about that because it's probably in my top 10 too.
It's,
Anyway,
Okay.
we'll talk about that later. We'll have another podcast for that one.
I know. I kept saying last episode also that I kept saying different podcasts, but it's not a different podcast. It's just a different episode that I want to talk about other things in. We have one podcast. It's just this, I swear.
Yeah. But anyway, so I really like that episode too. A lot of people didn't like it because they felt like it was like just weird, like
Yeah.
it didn't have to do with anything. But it's like that's a TV show.
It's
Like
the
they're introducing concepts. Like you need to wait for it all to play out and like come back around and everything.
Well, this entire show has been hinting at the cloning. Pershing came back from season 1. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's the setup and payoff over episodes, over years, that is really satisfying. Because I think people can complain about, right? Like when in Rise of Skywalker, we see Chewie in the transport that he presumably is in, gets blown up, and he presumably dies, and instantly we know he's alive, right?
Matter
And so
of
that's
seconds.
like instant gratification. It's not even gratifying. I guess it's like,
It's the opposite of instant gratification.
yes, but it's like so quick.
Instant dissatisfaction.
Yes, instant dissatisfaction versus seeing Pershing and that storyline kind of start in season 1 and then kind of finish potentially in season 3 as far as we know. And it's like, I think there's like, I don't see anything wrong with that because like seeing this side story is, if anything, I think built like more world building, which is more satisfying in the long run and when you're rewatching things versus Rise of Skywalker, which is a movie I personally still really enjoy. Is that instant dissatisfaction when you're like, like 30 seconds went by. You know, it's like one of my only complaints.
I will say I really like season 3 of The Mandalorian. I think
Yeah.
more than both of you, but not for any of the same reasons from what it seems. You're saying that The Mandalorian season 3 had a better through line and more consistent story throughout the whole season. I think it was far less consistent. I think season 1, the story of finding Grogu and turning your back on being a bounty hunter and learning to, choose him instead of choosing your job. And then season 2, the story of getting him back to his people. I think season 1 and 2 both had less of a adventure of the week format than season 3, but I like the adventure of the week format. Like season 3, the convert with Pershing and Elia Kane.
Yeah.
That did not have any. It was bookended with the Mandalorian at the beginning and end, but it was like 45 minutes of straight Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane that had almost nothing to do with the rest of the story, and I loved it. And then episode 4, The Foundling, that had the backstory with Grogu and Keller and Beck. Loved that absolutely.
Very cool.
And
Keller and Beck was a highlight.
Yeah.
he was, but there's so much more. It's not so much like one story, because everyone talks about like how we were talking about in the last episode how season 3 had the end of the story and it wrapped up Din Djarin and Din Grogu's stories really well. I think their story was even more concisely wrapped up at the end of season 2, and now season 3 was basically just epilogue, and everything we've seen was just world building around Din Djarin and Grogu, from the Mandalorians to
disagree
the
with that.
Imperial Remnant. I think that
I think
Don't talk about Imperial Revenant.
I think season 3 was a perfect bookend. I thought it was a nice way. It tied the string on a lot of
I think
somewhat loose ends, because season 1 started with Din Djarin finding this foundling, and then season 2 ended with giving him the choice. Season 2 of The Mandalorian ended with him going with Luke Skywalker to train to be a Jedi. And it's like hard to remember because a lot of Mandalorian content happened in the Book of Boba Fett. But when we came back then with season 3, so season 2 ends with Grogu leaving to be a Jedi. Season 3 ends with him with Din Djarin saying, I'm going to basically adopt this boy and raise him as my own.
That story beat fell kind of flat for me. What did you guys think of that when he formally adopts Grogu and name him Din Grogu? I mean, he was basically his dad for the last several years.
It didn't hit me as hard. It almost felt the same way as that when he went back into that bar and Zeb wasn't there the second time.
Yeah, we were all looking for him. We were all looking for him. I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that moment at all.
Same.
Except for when she called him Din Grogu. Since when do surnames come first in Mandalore culture? Why would it not be Grogu Djarin?
I mean, but he wasn't raised on Mandalore, right? So like, I think that's a whole other, there's a whole other thing that we're going to explore, right? I mean, I feel like as much as I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've talked to a lot of my coworkers specifically about this as well because that's obviously very not common. But I think it is because he is not a proper Mandalorian.
But neither was Din Djarin.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, I thought you were still talking about Grogu.
Sorry, no.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he's not a proper Mandalorian proper. So I feel like there is some gray area. With that being said,
what do you mean by Mandalorian proper?
well, like Bo-Katan, right? Like it is first name, last name. But like born on Mandalore, raised in the Mandalorian culture. Obviously, Din Djarin was saved.
He was raised in the Mandalorian culture.
Sure, but he was saved from somewhere else, right? So I assume.
So you're just talking about like bloodline?
Sure, yeah. Like when he was how old was he when he was saved? Like 8?
Yeah,
right.
Than 10,
so he has some history before his time with the Mandalorian. So I assume that's where it comes from. I could be vastly wrong.
I hope there's no difference with that though, because didn't they make that whole point in the Mandalorian season 1 where he said something along the lines of Mandalorian isn't a race, it's a creed?
Yes.
So I would hope
But
that there's
yeah.
I would hope that there's no like distinction of like, oh, Mandalorian isn't a race, it's a creed. But if you're not actually Mandalorian, then your last name has to come first because those are the rules.
Yeah, I agree.
I have no hard feelings. I'm just saying that's an option. He has potentially 8 years prior to that as well.
But that said,
so do you think he forgot about the past and killed it?
Let the past die?
Yeah.
we could do an entire segment on that alone.
Yeah. Sorry,
I have a lot of thoughts on that. But no. So what I was gonna say was like that was kind of weird to me. That just kind of like made me like shake my head for a second, like Din Grogu. But there were some other parts in there, like I said, kind of like Book of Boba Fett, where you just look at it and you're just like, yeah, that makes me happy.
Yep.
Like watching all of those Mandalorians fly into combat against those commando.
Oh yeah, watching them drop out of a gauntlet. I
Honestly,
can watch that on loop for the rest of my life.
When Axe was going through the clouds in the last episode,
Yeah,
that really got me. Something that perspective was really cool. That like you felt that danger for the first time in a long time. I was like, oh, is he gonna like come out of those clouds and see like a fleet of like Star Destroyers? Like, what's gonna happen? I mean, just even I don't know. It's like a little shaky. It's like that nervousness when like his comms are breaking up. And the entire time, also one last thing, I could not stop hearing Bo-Katan calling him ass. I think Axe is he needs to have his first and last name be said during an action scene
every time.
Yes, because they're like Axe, and I was like, is no one else hearing this? With that being said, Ray Sloan is also a weird name, so
similar to Ray Sloan, Axe Woves did not bother me as a name. But were you guys surprised that he survived crashing the light cruiser back into Mandalore?
Yes, and I'm very
when
glad he
popped the
survived.
window and just flew out. I was like, yeah, that's a really easy thing to do.
Yes.
But I just thought he wouldn't.
I know. I don't know why I thought the
stakes were
exact same
built up,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, he's gonna kamikaze it, and then he like shoots it with the rocket. And I'm just like,
Because
oh,
he's
of course.
Because he's smart. Because he's like, yeah, I'm not dying for this. Like, I mean,
Which that does seem like something, and I'm glad that they didn't. But it does seem like something that would happen in Star Wars that a lot of people would like be like, oh, why didn't he just do this?
Yeah.
You know? So it's like
it's playing against expectations, I think, and there realistically isn't a reason for him to die if he could easily do that, and he's a jetpack. If it was a different context, you could easily, if it's like the end of the line, if someone's putting their life at risk or something, that it makes sense to go down with the ship. But like in that scenario, he obviously pulled like a commander role, and then instantly was like, yeah, all right,
yeah.
I'm done with this. No purpose for me to die.
Yeah. So there was a lot of parts like that. Everything with the Praetorian guards.
Very
again,
cool.
Like you just look at it and you're just like, yeah, I like that. However, it does kind of come with Grogu doing some weird looking acrobatics.
Yes, when he's walking too at the end, but he's a puppet right? Or he's like, I mean,
Regrettably.
it's
I
that's a different episode.
yeah.
Yeah,
Bite my tongue.
yeah. I want to. Yeah, I'm going to as well. Because I want to go. I feel like I got to get into it a little bit too. And I know we talk about this a lot too, but saying it on here is a little different. Is that I think audience expectations versus showrunner and show creators' expectations are different, right? And I think that is what's weird about The Mandalorian is that like, I think everybody likes, and this is a whole other conversation that Max and I just had not that long ago, but it's like, I think there's a divide in the fandom a little bit is because what I'm realizing is that everybody likes Star Wars for different reasons. And I think that this is a great example. It's like Max and I like Mandalorian when it's specifically more intense and there's more on the line. The ending of season 2 is like so good, right? And it's like we like that conclusion, even though it ends as a cliffhanger. It's that conclusion to that story. And like Luke, you seem to like more of that episodic world building. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah,
exactly. And so it's like
building in season 3.
I like that too, but if it has the caveat, I mean, I still love it no matter what. But like with the caveat of if it serves the story of those characters and what direction those characters are going, because like obviously like in episode 6, obviously it's kind of getting a lot of hate. I don't think it deserves all that hate. It is a very odd episode but it feels like it's something straight out of Clone Wars and Rebels, which I have the distinct feeling that some people who don't like it so much don't understand that Dave Filoni, who also is creating Mandalorian, also created these shows. And I think Filoni specifically likes Star Wars for those weird creatures and that world building as well. Those kind of like otherworldly things you wouldn't see in a normal in like just say A New Hope, because there's not really a purpose for them in the story. And so I think that you have to have like these expectations and understanding, and as Star Wars gets bigger, which is going to consistently get bigger, is that I think we all need to have an understanding of like the context at which something is set in. I think I would love this if this happened, and there's a lot of talk about it before Boba Fett, is that like if Mandalorian became more of a Game of Thrones style show where we have storyline A as Din Djarin and Grogu, storyline B is Boba Fett, and like storyline C is like Bo-Katan, and we kind of weave in and out of them during an episode. But instead, obviously, we're sticking with basically one character or one storyline through the entire episode, which is totally fine.
In theory, I mean, what was the Mandalorian or what was Din Djarin's storyline throughout the entire series? Or
no,
season?
I mean like in an episode. Sorry,
okay.
In an episode. So like you'd be like, oh, he's gonna go and I mean, obviously in a different context, but you would follow them in different storylines, like much like Game of Thrones, or I think like more like kind of more world building episodes or shows rather.
Well, let me say this because I think this is going to get a big reaction out of Luke.
Okay, real quick. 2, 3, 2, 1, 3. Same as you is my season.
2, 1, 3. I was 2, 1, 3, and you said 2, 3, 1. I really like season 3 a lot. It came with those highs that we were talking about. Keller and Beck was definitely a highlight. I said that before.
Seeing the mountain on
However,
Coruscant.
Yeah, very cool.
it was a highlight in an otherwise not so great episode.
Yeah,
The Foundling, when they take Ragnar
yeah,
Yes.
and they
I
have
agree.
to go fight the dragons.
Yes,
You
that was.
I
didn't
agree.
love that?
I did
No.
not love that.
I think
Bo-Katan got to lead the search party. She got to
It's-
stay by the fire.
I think it's cooler when you're saying it out loud. I mean, it is very cool to see, but I think that's one of those episodes that has a lot of, I don't want to say weaker writing because that sounds like I'm dissing it, but like when they walked up to the to the mountain and they're like, we're gonna set up camp here until daylight, and then we see them setting up camp until daylight, and it's like that thing where it's like you have to show and not show versus tell the audience, and it's like little things like that, and that's like such a dumb complaint in comparison to like this overall conversation, and that's just more like me again. I really enjoyed that episode.
No, I mean we're talking about
But-
season 3 as a whole, and I think that is a very reasonable thing to bring up because there were a lot of criticisms I think about some of the writing because season 3, like you said, like think of it in like the context of a cartoon. Like a lot of the dialogue just sounds like it's in a cartoon, right?
It
I
tells
thought
you.
that- I
live
thought that about
action-
the first episode or two.
Yeah, and with live action, you just have different expectations, but there are still weird things like that
Exactly.
that take you out. Like
Yeah.
at the very beginning of episode 7, when Kane is having that hollow conversation with Moff Gideon, and Moff Gideon says something to the extent of, "What is the status?" and "Make it quick, as I am in a hurry."
Yes, I mean,
Like that's a weird thing to say. Like,
Yes.
shouldn't it just be presumed that you're in a hurry?
And
This is like a
but got
sketchy
places
back
to
alley
go.
meeting.
and I think the other thing is that if it was a bigger storyline and we saw why he was in a hurry, that is okay. But the fact that we don't have any context of what he's actually doing,
See, that
is
one
what's weird.
bothered me because I feel like it's just assumed that he's in a hurry.
This
This is a sketchy back alley meeting with an
Yes.
Imperial warlord.
Yeah.
Like, keep it short.
Yes, no, yeah. Again, context of the scene.
Yeah, don't ask for pleasantries. Don't be like, "Oh, so
I-
how's the weather there?
I
Where
think
are you exactly?"
There is a lot. This season, in general, right, I think it is very good, but I think maybe I'm being too kind in general. I feel like I'm backtracking a lot and not having a strong opinion, but I think the overall there's those standout moments versus standout episodes, and you're going to be thinking of those standout moments. When we saw Zeb was amazing, right?
Yeah.
To be honest, like what episode? That was the pirate episode, right?
That was a good episode.
That was a great
That
episode.
was a great
Okay,
episode.
yes, it was. As I'm looking on
Gorian
IMDb.
Shar,
The thing with Keller and Beck, people are going to be thinking about that scene with
Yeah,
Keller and Beck for a long
exactly.
time. That was a great scene, but I'm probably never going to rewatch that episode.
Yeah, it's I don't know about never rewatch, but I think yes, I agree. That is like, but that's what I'm thinking about, right? I'm thinking about Beck, not necessarily that full episode. And the same thing, yes, I guess the pirate is a good episode, and that's kind of a bad example. But the same thing in that episode, what are you thinking of? And I am thinking of Zeb the entire time, every single time.
That
in
was
episode.
exciting. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so I think this. I mean, it's a good season, but it's an uneven season. It's a very uneven season. And I
What are
think
these low lows that you guys keep talking about?
Well, let's just get into it. It's episode 6.
It is episode 6.
The Foundling had Keller and Beck. That was awesome. There was. I shouldn't say that. I guess. Okay, yeah, I'll walk it back. The first 3 minutes of episode 6 and the last 3 minutes were good, but everything in between there was. I don't want to say hate. Hate's a strong word, but it wasn't good. And the actual adventure itself wasn't that good, and all of the casting immediately takes you out of it. Like the entire time, you're just like, but why Lizzo? Why Jack Black?
And I love Jack Black. I love Lizzo. Christopher Lloyd is amazing. I also love him. But it's like I think Star Wars should be one of
And
those
she's
things,
apparently a huge Star Wars fan too.
which is great. I'm so glad they're in it. But like
that's cool, but-
they did it really well in season 1 with Adam Pawley and I think Jason Sudeikis as the
because they had their
Stormtroopers.
helmet, they had their faces covered,
Yes.
so it's like a fun Easter egg. Like
Yeah,
that doesn't immediately take
exactly.
you out of it. The second you see Jack Black, you're like, oh,
Tim-
that's Jack Black. And I noticed Jack Black right away.
Yeah.
And then my eyes shifted to Lizzo, and I was like, wait, what the?
Yeah.
Like, and like the two of them together, like that's
Yeah.
also just such a weird combination.
Star Wars in general shouldn't be about like A-list star power. I don't think it never has been, right? Even in Andor, you have Andy Serkis, but he's like not even a massive actor. I mean, he's huge, right? He's in Lord of the Rings. He's a big director. He's
in Star Wars.
He's in yes, exactly. But like I was not taken out of that at all because like you rarely see Andy Serkis
Yeah.
as Andy Serkis in things. I feel like. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, you
That's
see
true.
him in Black Panther, but even then, it's like he always is doing something different. And to me, it's like he is more Gollum. He is more of this other being. But it's like the same thing in A New Hope, right? You have Peter Cushing, which is an amazing actor, and yet he doesn't have like that massive star power because he was in more of these weird horror movies, right? He's playing Van Helsing, he's playing Sherlock Holmes, he's playing these other characters, but you're not taken out of it instantly, even though Peter Cushing's on a bunch of stuff. The same thing with Christopher Lee in Lord of the Rings. It's like he is a massive actor, and yet I am not taken out of it.
Can we at
And-
least talk about Christopher Lee in Star Wars if we're going to talk about Christopher Lee?
I'm sure. Okay, yes. Okay. Oh my God. I don't know why I blanked on that. I literally went from okay. Man,
And
cut that.
Sam Jackson too.
Well, yeah, but even then, it's like for some reason,
Sam
this-
Jackson wasn't that big of a star in the 90s, was he?
Pulp Fiction
Yeah.
was huge
All right.
Wasn't that like his prime?
in like '94. I mean, yeah, then also Jurassic Park in
I mean,
'99,
he was barely in Jurassic Park.
Jurassic
and
Park
that
was
wasn't in
also 99?
No, that was
'93.
93. Okay.
But he was barely in Jurassic Park. I mean, Pulp Fiction was his first like big movie. How many other movies was he in the 90s?
Shaft. He was in a lot.
Was he? Okay.
Yes.
I'm
He was in the third Die Hard.
I'm
I
out
have
of
no
my
idea
depth
when that
here.
one came out. The first Die Hard was in the 80s, so maybe the third one was in the 90s.
I believe
it
it
might have
was.
been.
Oh man, I did not know we were talking about Sam Jackson, and now I can't believe I just said Christopher Lee in Lord of the Rings. I kind of live that
well,
down
I
for myself.
I just don't get the resentment you guys have of having a massive star being in this episode of The Mandalorian.
Because
or
there's-
even multiple, because there were 3,
Well, 'cause
and I
exactly,
noticed,
there's
but I guess it
3.
just didn't take me out of it the same way it took you out of it.
I
I
mean,
can't.
triples
It's
down.
hard. It's hard to quantify. I mean, I can't explain it. Sometimes
I mean,
it
yeah.
feels natural, and sometimes it takes
But,
you
like,
out of it.
When
And this
can you
one,
name in Star Wars again that has a massive star? Even McGregor didn't take me out of it. I mean, in '99 it's a little different because he kind of became this other being, but it still didn't take me out of it. Like, can you name a person that took you out of it in Star Wars?
you
before?
mentioned Game of Thrones earlier. Like
still
it's
can't.
like when
Ed
Ed Sheeran
Sheeran,
showed up
yeah.
in Game of Thrones. Like everyone's like, oh, that's cool. Like he's a big fan, and like he really wanted this. But it's like you look at him and you're just
Yeah.
like, but that's Ed Sheeran. What's he
Yeah.
doing there?
Exactly. That's like if you casted just I don't know. I'm trying to think of like that's like if you can you imagine casting like Tom Cruise in The Force Awakens. Like at that time, even it's like, oh yeah, like that's such a weird thing because it's going to be a Tom Cruise movie, no longer like that. Everyone's going to refer to that as a Jack Black episode. No one's ever going to refer to Attack of the Clones as the Christopher Lee movie. Like I think that's the basis of it.
That's their acting persona, I guess. It's like too big.
Yes, and I love Jack Black. I mean, he's great in everything he does, and he's like,
but everything
super
he does
entertaining.
is a Jack Black movie.
Exactly, and then it's a fine line, and that's the thing is like when you're talking about Mandalorian season 3, I guarantee everyone's going to be like, oh, is that the one with Jack Black?
Yeah.
Which is like such a weird thing.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess it just doesn't bother me like it bothers you. I was okay with
But
it.
what about the rest of the episode though? Like the actual adventure with the droids?
Yeah, that was the first time we've seen live action B2 super battle droids since Attack of the Clones.
And running, which was
And
which
they
was
looked
badass.
cool running.
Yes, that was really cool.
We got to see Bo-Katan and Mandalorian and Bo-Katan
With
and
that being
Din Djarin
said-
team up and the differences in their styles. Din Djarin just starts knocking him over, and Bo-Katan wanted to go more calculated.
But see, that's the thing too.
I thought there was good story elements in terms of the season as a whole also,
That's
but everyone seems to poo-poo.
my biggest kind of like.
But it came at the very last 3 minutes that was completely irrelevant to the rest of the story.
I think that's the thing is that the season starts and then stops consistently, and I think that's what is people find ungratifying. Which again, it's like season. Usually,
Every season did that. That's how the Mandalorian works. Everyone's like, "Oh, Moff Gideon wasn't even in it, and he escaped off screen." Like Moff Gideon has been in 6 episodes, the last 2 of every season, every time. He's not a main character.
but I think that's what you need for a true villain, right? Can you imagine you seeing Darth Vader only in like Empire? Like, I mean, obviously, because that's the thing. It's all the rise and that pressure building to something that is a satisfying release, right? It's like not seeing the Emperor fully until Return. It's like you get hints, right? You get breadcrumbs, right? And that's like super smart. Darth Vader is like this looming presence who you learn more about through the entire time. Moff Gideon, we don't really learn his plan until the last episode of. Do we learn about it in episode 7 or is it 8? Either way, we learn his plan.
Depends how you define his plan.
Very late, and we only have 5 episodes previously with him. And in those episodes, he's only in episode 7 for like 40 seconds. And then I think they do the same thing in season 1. Again, that sounds like I'm complaining about the show. It's not a complaint because, again, it's like expectations for the audience versus creator. Which, again, this seems like to be working more for you, Luke. Like, obviously, it seems to be working more for like it's just the basis of why you like Star Wars, I think, is a little different, which is totally fine. I'm very interested in having that. I feel like that's a whole episode as well of why we like Star Wars, because I think I mean we've talked about this a little bit, and I think we all have overlap. And like I was talking to one of our good friends, Josh Vanderzijden, big fan of Luke Taylor, and vice versa. He like specifically likes Star Wars only for Luke Skywalker, which to me is insane. Because it's like
it has a lot more to give.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. And so I think that's the thing, though. Is like he likes very specific things, and Star Wars has no interest in other stuff because if it doesn't involve Luke, it's like, oh, I don't really care. And it's like very odd to me. But at the same time, we do all have overlap, I think, in what we love about it. Again, that's why it's like we like this season, but you love this season. And it's very interesting, I think. And I think there's something good to find in everything. Because again, if you like something, you should like it. You have to love everything, but you should enjoy the content.
I think season 3 will age much better than everyone is rating it right now. I think all the things that you guys are complaining about will, with the benefit of hindsight, look like the exact same things that you complained about at the end of season 1 and at the end of season 2. There were episodes that were better and worse. There were episodes in seasons 1 and 2 that were complete spin-offs that had nothing to do with the plot moving forward.
See, I disagree. I think some of those imperfections are always going to last. That's okay. You know, like Matt said, like... Well, whatever. I mean...
No, compliment me.
No, well, what Matt and I always talk
Validate
about...
my things.
What Matt and I always talk about is, like, it's okay to just like something. Like, you don't have to yuck someone else's yum, you know? Like, if you like Star
Wars...
Wars...
That phrase, sorry.
I love that phrase. I use that regularly.
Do not like...
will
not be using...
If you don't like Star Wars, if it's fallen off for you, like, that's fine. Just don't, like, try to ruin it for other people. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, we like Star
As
Wars.
we're telling Luke why something's bad.
But those are our opinions.
Yeah.
And overall, like you said, we still love The Mandalorian. I mean, I would not say that was a bad season of television at all.
Same.
And like Luke said, I think at the beginning of this podcast, we're kind of splitting hairs between like a 9.5 and a 10, so to speak. That's not actually what I would rank it on a scale of 1 to 10. But we're debating between was it good or was it great? Because overall, I think season 3 was really good. It had, to me, some high highs, some low lows.
What are these other low lows?
Why didn't they bring back IG-11 to begin with? Why they put him in a statue even though there's the potential? But then...
Why the statue had him before they thought to try to revive him if they could?
Honestly, I'm okay with that because there's a level of you have to give, right? It's like, it's okay. I'm not even like, that's fine with it. That didn't really bug me. And then I also saw people complaining in episode 7. They're like, why did Grogu even have that IG-11? Like, he didn't do anything with it. It's like, well, wait till next episode. Like, he's obviously going to do something. There's this set. It's the Chekhov's gun, right? Like,
I thought IG-12 was there to stay. I thought Grogu was going to be riding around in IG-11's carcass for the rest of time, and I loved it. I was very sad to see IG-12 go down.
Yeah. I think
that was one of my favorite parts of season 3, honestly.
It was cool. I think the thing why season 3 is looking maybe not looked down upon, but I think is my least favorite for sure, is that we're, again, expectations. I was waiting for it to kind of kick back into that full storyline, which I know it can be and be really intense because they did it in season 2. We saw it in season 1. We saw little snippets. So season 3, I was just really hoping it was going to go to that next level and really rank up and really be. I don't even want it to be like a full drama, obviously, like Succession or something. But like I wanted it to just rank up and like being able to have a through line story that every week I'm like at the edge of my seat. And it's not that going to be that show. Like, I think season 3 kind of solidified it, and I think that's what some expectations were like in season 1. You're like, oh, I'm just kind of getting used to it. Season 2 kind of gave it to you, and season 3 kind of reverted back a little bit. So it's just one of those things where I think it's like not even a letdown, but it's like the same thing when the Emperor came back, right? It's just like I think people in their minds, they wanted things to be different than they were, and they're not. And then people have in their heads better theories of how things could have been done, and they kind of boast them up, and then when the reality of what the writers wrote comes out, people are disappointed, which there's nothing you can do about, because again, it's like most of the stuff that you're disappointed in is things that you concocted in your own head.
But there's also some things that they implanted in our head too, such as Rangers of the New Republic.
Yeah,
I think that would be a really interesting show, and I think a lot of this season had a lot of references to what is supposed to be Rangers of the New Republic. I don't know if they're still doing that or not. I don't know where that stands. They obviously didn't talk about it at Celebration, so I'm assuming it's just shelved. I'm using air quotes, shelved for now, because Lucasfilm never comes out and says, oh, we're not doing that anymore. They just shelve it.
Yeah. Is there a possibility it'll be wrapped up into Mando season 4?
I do believe it'll be almost exactly what Mando season 4 is. I think they had an idea for Rangers of the New Republic, and then they scrapped it, and then they renamed it Mando season 4.
They're still starting late, though, because I feel like this was supposed to play off of elements that were supposed to happen in Rangers of the New Republic. And the big thing that comes to my mind is Moff Gideon breaking out of that Tiberian shuttle or whatever, or Lambda-class shuttle, on his way to trial. Because he was like,
you think that should have been in Rangers of the New Republic?
That's a huge storyline. There's a guy,
Rangers of the New Republic was never going to
warlord
release
who never made
Mando
it to
season
trial.
3, though.
There is. I think that's a great
Was it
misdirect.
not supposed to? I didn't know if it was or not.
I think that's a misdirect.
I mean, they would have had to film it by the time it was canceled.
I mean, they would have had time to do so much. There was such a huge gap between season 2. When did season 2 ended in 2019?
2020.
2020?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Which is almost 3.
3.
Yeah, it's 2023. I don't know about months necessarily, but like it is almost 3 years, which is crazy. But I feel like
No, it ended in 2021, spring 2021.
Did it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you 100%? Did you look at IMDb? What if I told you? What if I told you it ended in December of 2020? Would you believe me? Because it did. Yeah.
It ended in
I would not
December.
have. It really did.
December 18th, 2020.
I thought every season came out in late fall and ended in early spring, but I guess Book of Boba Fett was a later release.
Yeah. And I think sorry, going back real quick, that was a great misdirect. I thought that I think they needed to like let it linger for a bit. Is that we're meant to believe potentially that Bo-Katan's crew broke out Gideon, right? She goes to like get them back on her side.
I never thought that.
I feel like that could have been a great misdirect. So maybe it's just like perception, because I think we talked about that, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
That like that is potentially what happened.
Because they found the Beskar armor in the shuttle before we knew anything about the Beskar stormtroopers that Moff Gideon was created.
Yes.
So we said, oh, well, who broke them out? And so we were like, oh, well, Bo-Katan's ex-crew are these basically mercenaries for hire.
And they said if the price is right.
Exactly.
And so it's like that's a great misdirect, but I feel like they should have actually laid that on, because like, it could have been a great tense moment if Axe was actually going to be potentially bad. Like we all thought, maybe what if he turns on Bo-Katan because he's actually working with Gideon? We could have thought about that until
the armor. Everyone thought the armor was going to be bad.
The armor still seems sketchy to me, but I think it's just because she's like so like not stuck in her ways, but she's like so straight like an arrow that I feel like there is like this weirdness to her. But I feel like it's like, oh no, she's just like totally normal and not bad at all.
I did have a weird moment where I like kind of audibly laughed out loud when I was watching them fly into battle, because they all had like blasters and they were gearing up. And
the armor?
She had her
and
armor
her little
songs.
cape. Like,
and I was like,
yeah.
I understand like why in the past those were handy to use and that you're very capable with it, but are those like actually your weapons of choice? Like you were voluntarily flying into combat with your hammers right
honestly,
now?
to be fair, this opens up a whole other point, and Max specifically knows one of my favorite things about Star Wars is to figure out like how does reality work in Star Wars? Like how do you figure out an apartment for yourself when you're so many different species, and what are those needs like? Anyway, where would she have left those? And not those have not been stolen is my question to you. Because there's
They
no
had,
way
they had little tents set up back at their base.
you're trusting that
She
in a
has,
battle.
she has a chest, I'm sure.
I had almost the exact same thought when we saw her flying in with
Yeah.
her tongs and hammer, and then I immediately shot that thought back out of my mind when we saw all those clips of her smashing people in
people, yeah.
midair with
Correct,
the hammer.
because it
And I
was
like, oh yeah, this is
immediately-
exactly what I wanted. Actually,
It was
They
gratification.
were- they were
Immediately
right.
followed up by that feeling of just like, yeah, okay, I like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, like in your head, you can be like, that's impractical, but when you watch it, you're just like, oh, yeah, that feels good.
Very good.
All right, we're kind of running over time, so real quick, let's do starting with Matt. Final thoughts and an overall rating out of 10.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think overall,
Whole
I guess-
numbers only.
whole numbers. Ooh, that's
Whole
Otherwise,
numbers.
otherwise it would be out of 100. Don't get me started on that.
I'm glad out of 10 though, because I think ranking things out of 5 is real dicey, and I think that's a lot of room to wiggle room. Anyway, no wiggle room. I think overall the season again has really high highs, semi low lows. And I think ultimately, it feels uneven, and it feels like I don't want to diss writers or just the writing in general, but and again, it's just catering to a younger audience. I think it is just catering to a younger audience, which is totally fine. Versus Andor, which I love Andor, and we have to talk about that really in depth, hopefully very
I mean,
soon.
it's catering to a younger audience than Andor, but do you think it's catering to a younger audience than Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2?
I don't think it. I think it's one of those things where it just ultimately.
Seems unfair to recontextualize the Mandalorian season 3 in terms of seasons 1 and 2 and 3 because
No.
Andor was so good.
No. I think I would take Andor over seasons 1 and 2 of Mandalorian as well, personally. But
Serious?
I do. Yes. Yeah.
Wait, you do?
Well, yeah. I would take.
Oh yeah. Me too.
Wait. What?
Andor is my favorite thing that's come out in first Star Wars since Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, okay. I say Return. You say Revenge of the Sith. Oh, maybe not, because I really love Rogue One. Turning a little in. We have a lot to talk about. I'm very excited for future weeks. I think
I really like The Last Jedi. I think we know exactly what we're about to talk about as soon as I hit stop.
save it for the pod.
Go ahead.
No, I also really like Last Jedi. But I think also okay, kind of restarting, not restarting, but I think overall I really liked Mandalorian on the weekly basis. I'm really interested in watching it kind of 1 through 8 as a whole, back to back. Again, not obviously week by week. I think it's a little uneven. I think it has a little bit more to be desired, but I think in the future watching it with your kids will be a lot of fun. And I think that's the basis of what Star Wars should be, is that it should just be fun. And so I'm excited to rewatch it in general. I don't think Star Wars at this point is bad or has run out of ideas, and there's so much more to explore. I think ultimately I'd give it a little bit lower rating than I would think, and I would give, for context, I think I'd give Mandalorian Season 2 a 9, I think I'd give Mandalorian Season 1 an 8, and I think I would give Mandalorian Season 3 a 7.
That is low. I am shocked. Mandalorian season 3, 10 for me. Same with season 2. Season 1, I'll give a 9.
10s are rare for me.
Yeah,
I think
you got to.
out of my top 100 movies, I think I only have 3 10s.
If it was a different show, not about Star Wars, the exact same, I'd probably give it like an 8. But because it's Star Wars and because I love Star Wars so much and there's so much extra world building and stuff already attached.
So you were an unreliable source.
Yes, I
Okay,
guess.
I just wanted to
I
make
mean,
sure.
we're not reviewing The Mandalorian as film critics. We're reviewing it as Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
This is a Star Wars podcast. Our biases are coming out. We do like Star Wars.
Yeah.
It turns out.
I said how much I like Andor. That has been a frequent pain of mine when someone talks to me about whether or not I like Andor, and I say yes, and you should watch it because it's amazing, and it's almost unfortunate that it's a Star Wars show because then they don't believe me that it's also one of the greatest TV shows ever made. Like
It's
that show,
fantastic.
I would still love just as much even if it wasn't Star Wars.
It is very good. I keep trying to convince my brother Mike to watch it, and it is like pulling teeth for some reason.
Yeah, he would love it.
It's
Yeah, it's pretty good. I
Maxwell?
ultimately, I actually don't have a whole lot to add because Matt literally stole my exact rankings. I was going to give this one a 7, season
Yeah,
2
baby.
a 9, and season 1 an 8. But let us know if you disagree. Reach out to us on the social medias. You can find me on Twitter at MaxterJedi.
You can find me at Filmowski on most social media things,
I'm on Twitter at KitFistoBlog and on TikTok at LittleChili99.
and also just tag us and things, message us,
Yeah, just reach
complain
out.
if you want.
We are Star Wars fans, so we're just lonely. We're just looking for more people to talk to about this.
We're just an editor, a lawyer, and a stay-at-home dad.
We'll let you determine which ones are which. Until next time.